All right, we are into the dissipation of individual glamour. um, I didn't want to let a day go where we didn't do some work on here, so even though it's in the evening, I would like to do some reading. So let's get going here. Let us first of all consider the mode by which the individual aspirant can succeed in dissipating the glamours, which have for ages conditioned his life in the three worlds. He has been dominated by desire for 4/5 of his incarnated experience. He has begun to transmute his desire into aspiration and to seek with all the devotion, emotion, and longing of which he is capable for realization. It is then that he becomes aware of the appalling nature of the glamours in which he automatically and normally walks. Glamour arose when man recognized and registered desire as an incentive, thus demonstrating his humanity and his distinction from the animal, because it is the mind which reveals the existence of desire. The instinctual effort to satisfy, innate and inherent in the lower nature, gave place to planned efforts to meet desire, involving the directive use of the mind. Now, I don't want to zoom past that too quickly. We recognize desire as an incentive. We demonstrate, thus demonstrating in humanity and his distinction from the animal, because the mind, it is the mind which reveals the existence of desire. So we can look at it as something that has been revealed and is expressing itself. Very interesting. Thus, the line of demarcation between the animal and the human has become increasingly apparent, and the first and basic expression of pure selfishness appeared aeons ago. Later, as evolution proceeded, desire shifted from one planned satisfaction to another, it began to take on a less physical aspect, and men sought pleasure in emotional experience and in its dramatization. This led to the establishment of the drama as its first artistic expression. By means of this, down the ages, man has supplanted individual emotion. Supplemented. Man has supplemented individual emotion and dramatic living with a vicarious submergence in it. Thus exteriorizing himself and supplementing his personal dramas, desires, and objectives with those which were developed by means of the creative imagination, thus laying the foundation for the recognition, intelligent and real, of the part in relation to the whole. Thus, from earliest Atlantean times, the foundation was laid for the unfoldment of the sense of mystical duality through the various stages of anthropomorphic recognition of deity to the recognition of the real in man himself, until finally we arrive at the proposition which faces the disciple. Then the dweller on the threshold confronts the angel on the presence, and the last and major conflict is fought out. This dualistic consciousness culminates at the time of the third initiation in the final fight between the pairs of opposites and the triumphant victory of the angel. The embodiment of the forces of good in the individual, in the group, and in humanity. Then dualism and the desire for that which is material and not oneself dies out. Not oneself as identified with the whole dies out. Then dualism and the desire for that which is material and not oneself unity and the life more abundantly is achieved. The process followed by the disciple who is consciously working at the dissipation of glamour and his life can be divided into 4 stages to which the following definitions can be given. Stage of recognition of the glamour or glamours which hide the real. These glamours are dependent in any particular life crisis upon the ray of the disciple. The stage of focusing the disciple's consciousness upon the mental plane and the gathering of the light to that point of focus so that the illumination is clear, the work to be done is plainly seen, and the searchlight of the mind is directed upon the glamour which it is intended should be dissipated. 3, the stage of direction. This involves the steady pouring of the light under intelligent direction into the dark places of the astral plane, remembering that the light will enable the disciple to do 2 things: dissipate the glamour, a satisfying experience, and B, that was A, and B, see the real, a terrifying experience, brother of mine. And 4, well, and we, these things should certainly be contemplated as we're reading, right? No doubt we should be considering all of these things, and how do we just pass over when he says see the real, a terrifying experience? Because there's nothing we can do about it, essentially, right? I mean, there's not much to talk about until we've gotten through the those stages. And then since stage 4, the stage of identification with the real as it is contacted after the dissipation of the glamour. In the added light, which is now available, there will be a further recognition of still subtler glamours, which in their turn must be dissipated. This process of recognition, focusing, dissipation, and consequent revelation goes on continually from the time the disciple treads the path of accepted discipleship until the 3rd initiation. The clue to all success in this process is, therefore, connected with meditation and the holding of the mind steady in the light. Only through steadiness can the beam of light be formed, intensified, focused, and projected, and then at the right moment withdrawn. I cannot here enter upon an elucidation of the process of meditation based on the right understanding of the nature of concentration. I have written much upon the subject, and the Raja Yoga discipline is well known. Mental concentration and control is now the ordinary theme of all instructions given by educators and enlightened parents. It is difficult for the average person today to realize that there was a time when such phrases as use your mind, or if you will only think, or a little mental control on your part would be useful, were totally unknown because the mind was so little developed. It was then only recognized as a functioning factor by those with initiate consciousness. The path of evolution is in fact the path of recognitions, leading to revelation. The whole process of evolution is initiatory in character, leading from one expansion of consciousness to another until the worlds of the formless and of the form stand revealed in the light which the initiate generates and in which he walks. These lights are varied and variously revealing. There is one, the light of matter itself found in every atom of substance. Two, the light of the vital or etheric vehicle, a light which is the reflection of the one light because it unifies the three types of light within the three worlds. Three, the light of the instinct. Four, the light of the intellect or the light of knowledge. Five, the light of the soul. And six, the light of the intuition. From light to light, we pass from revelation to revelation until we pass out of the realm of light into the realm of life, which is, as yet to us, pure darkness. It will be obvious to you that this increasing light brings with it a constantly developing series of revelations, which, like all else in the world of human experience, unfolds before the eyes first of all, of the world of forms, then the world of ideals, then the nature of the soul, of ideas, and of divinity. Okay, so we're coming, it's like coming back up. I am choosing but a few of the words which embody the revelation and are symbolic of its character. But all these revelations constitute one great unified revelation, which is slowly unfolding before the eyes of humanity. The light of the personal lower self reveals to man the world of form, of matter, of instinct, and of desire, of desire, and of mind. The light of the soul reveals the nature of the relation of these forms of life to the world of the formless and of the conflict between the real and the unreal. The light of the intuition unfolds before the vision of the soul within the personality. Unfolds before the vision of the soul within the personality. The nature of God and the unity of the whole. The restlessness of material desire, seeking its satisfaction in the three worlds, eventually gives place to aspiration towards soul contact and soul life. This in its turn is recognized as a step towards those great fundamental experiences to which we give the names of the 5 major initiations. These reveal to man the hitherto unrealized fact of his non-separateness and of the relation of his individual will to the divine will. We are now going to study the mode whereby these phases of work upon the astral are carried forward. First, the individual learns to use the light of the mind generated by the soul as it becomes closely related to the personality and impulsed by the intuition. By means of this light, the disciple learns to dissipate his personal and private glamours, I mention this because I would have you appreciate the extent of the task a man undertakes when he consciously sets about ridding himself of glamour preparatory to extended service. He is in conflict with the whole glamour of the entire plan and is apt to be overwhelmed by a realization of what he is facing. This is one of the causes of deep depression and those profound inferiority complex, which render some people completely futile or lead eventually to suicide. Their own personal glamours tie them into national or planetary glamour and thus condition their life expression and their thinking. I would ask you to remember this as you deal with people and find them set in their ideas and unable to see the truth as you see it. They are as they are because their individual glamour is fed by the greater glamours, and this is as yet too much for them. It is not my intention to deal specifically with particular glamours, but to give you a formula with slight changes and additions can serve the individual and the group in the task of eradicating glamour. I would begin by saying that the first need is for the man to realize that his reactions, ideas, desires, and life experience, as far as his emotional nature is concerned, are conditioned by some one glamour or glamours, that he is the victim of several glamours engendered over many lives, deeply rooted in his past history, into which he instinctually reacts. The time, however, comes when the probationary disciple becomes aware of these instinctual glamours and recognizes them on appearance, even when reacting to them. He seeks to free himself, working at first spasmodically, trying to use the mind to rationalize himself out of them and altering between temporary success, when he can with deliberation act as if free from glamour, and long periods of defeat when he is overwhelmed, can see no light anywhere, and acts like a blind, bewildered person. That's pretty telling there. This indicates that he is drawn as by a magnet, the force of accumulated ancient glamour with its karmic effects, into the midst of the very glamour he would seek to avoid. Later comes the stage, as a result of this altering process, when the pull of the soul begins to offset the pull of these glamours. He aspires to free expression and to liberation from astral plane control. The balancing process then takes place. It is during this stage that meditation is instituted so that the man becomes aware of soul light as it blends with the inherent light of the mental body, and this blended light steadily intensifies as he persists in the meditation work. A point then comes where the aspirant discovers that this inner light can be used, and he begins tentatively and with uneven success to turn that light upon the problems of his particular glamour. It is also at this point that we now carry forward the technique of light, employing it so the vague, unscientific technique of the past comes to an end. The indicated technique is of use only to the man who knows something of the light of the mind, of the light in the head, and of the light of the soul. The light in the head is produced by the definitely planned bringing together of soul light and personality light, focused in the mental body and producing an effect in the brain. This focusing process falls into 3 stages. 1, the attempt to focus the light of the mind and of matter in the mental vehicle. This signifies a bringing together of the light of matter and substance, dense material and etheric light, and the light of the mind itself. There is no peculiar or specific light in or of the astral body itself, for it is only an aggregate of forms created by individual man, by nations, and by races. And these in their entirety constitute the astral plane and possess no inherent light as do other forms. They are not created as a form of expression for some dynamic life by the planetary logos. And this is the real meaning of what I have earlier told you, that the astral plane in reality does not exist. It is the phantasmeric creation of human desire down the ages, and its false light is a reflection of either the light of matter or of the mind. This process of focusing is undertaken through alignment by the effort to bring to a point of illumination the positive light of the mind and the negative light of the brain, and is carried forward through mental control, developed in meditation. When these two opposite poles are in relation, then these two aspects of the lesser light can form a pinpoint of light, like a small torchlight, revealing some phase of the glamour to which the aspirant most easily responds. This first focused light is not of such a nature that it can do more than reveal. This first focused light is not of such a nature that it can do more than reveal. It has no dissipating power, nor can it render existing glamour ineffective. It can only make a man aware of his waking or brain consciousness that glamour holds him. It can only make a man aware in his waking or brain consciousness that glamour holds him. This is related to the stage of concentration in the meditation process. The second stage of the focusing process is produced through the effort to meditate. In the previous stage, the blending of the two material lights was entirely a form process, and the aspirant is actuated entirely by his personality forces and expediency. An illustration of this and of its effectiveness can be seen in the man who, from purely selfish motives and through an intense concentration, focuses his mind and brings about the gratification of his desires and the achievement of his goals. He kills out all emotional reaction and goes a long way towards dissipating glamour. He develops the ability to draw on the light of matter itself, physical matter and mental substance, and thus he generates a false light from which soul light is rigorously excluded. Well, if that's not telling there, I mean, I don't even know what could, that's an incredible statement. That he kills out all emotional reaction is for just, he develops the ability to draw on the light of matter itself. And thus he generates a false light from which soul light is rigorously excluded. It is this power which eventually produces a black magician. He has developed the capacity to draw upon the light energy of matter itself, and to focus it so powerfully and effectively that it becomes a great destructive force. It is this which has given Hitler and the 6 evil men associated with him their power to destroy upon the material plane. But in the case of the aspirant, the power to meditate upon spiritual reality and to contact the soul offsets the dangers inherent in focusing on and using solely the light of matter. So the lesser light of matter is added the light of the soul, and then these two blended lights or aspects of the one light are focused upon the mental plane through the power of the creative imagination. This enables man eventually to dissipate glamour and liberates him from the astral plane. So this, yeah, all right, so this is good here. The third stage is that in which the light of matter, the light of mind, and the light of the soul as a channel for the intuition are consciously blended, fused, and focused. The man then turns this blended light under soul direction upon the world of glamour and upon the particular glamour with which he is at any one time preoccupied. The false light of the astral plane disappears in this triple blended light, just like a fire can be nearly put out if subjected to the full rays of the sun. Can be nearly put out. Or a burning glass, focusing the rays of the sun, can start a destructive blaze. It is the use of a powerful light which can obliterate a lesser light and dissipate a fog. Well, that makes that analogy there certainly helps. All this has to be understandingly and consciously carried forward as a preliminary to the technique proper. His work will be experimental at first and scientifically applied eventually. It will be based upon a recognition of truth, the truth which is faced and accepted. This work is not a form of rationalization, though that precedes the definitely scientific work I am outlining. It is not the cultivation of fresh interests of a mental and spiritual kind which gradually supersede desire and drive out glamour. That is all preparatory in character and leads to an unfoldment which prepares the aspirant to work scientifically. It is not a process of killing out desire, as some schools of thought teach, but is a process of gradually eradicating desire by stern discipline and hard-trained work, and this, incidentally, involves the dissipation of glamour. So this is the teaching that would have been essentially associated with kill out desire. But we're seeing the deeper and more informational side of this. I want to say we're getting the teaching. Such have been the slow techniques of the past. Today, the process is to be changed because enough people are now the product of understanding and can work wisely and also scientifically. The process I am developing for you is one of rapid and effective dissipation and is based upon the acceptance of the hypothesis of light, upon the recognition of the fact that the astral plane is no true existence, upon a trained use of the creative imagination, and upon the unquestioning following of instruction individually and as a group. It is my intention to give you two formulas, one for the use of the individual and the other which groups can use as they contribute their united effort to the dissipation of glamour, either of group glamour or in relation to some aspect of the prevalent world glamour. Two things will be apparent to you. First, that those participating in the eradication of glamour must be able to distinguish between glamour and the reality. These often closely resemble each other on a superficial examination. It must be in a position to recognize that an emotional or astral condition constitutes a veil over the truth and is a distortion of the presentation or the appearance of the individual's or the group's expression of divinity. They must therefore be capable of vision, clear thinking, and prompt recognition as to what is preventing the materializing of that vision and the accurate reception of the truth. They must also be able to distinguish between a major and a minor glamour. A minor glamour, a passing evanescent thought form of an easily recognizable nature, does not warrant the use of either of the formulas. Such a minor glamour would be a sense of self-pity in an individual or the glorification of some notable individual by an individual or group or a nation. Time and common sense suffice to take care of such a situation. A major glamour in the world prior to the war was the emphasis put upon possessions and the belief that happiness was dependent upon things and upon material good and comfort. Second, that the three stages of focusing referred to above constitute a preparatory process. These three stages must be somewhat developed before effective use of the formulas can be possible, and those intending to work at the task of ridding the world of glamour must subject themselves constantly to these phases in the art of polarization, if I might so call it. They must have an understanding of the apparatus of thought, of the creation of thought forms, and of the nature of the thinker. They must be emotionally polarized, yet in group work relatively free from astral control. This astral liberation must to a certain extent control the choice of those who are to work at major dissipations. In the case of the individual who is seeking to break up glamour in his individual life, he should be mentally polarized by decision and effort, even if the emotional nature is for him in any one life the line of least resistance. Those working in group formation will have achieved a measure of mental focus, but for the purposes of the work to be done, they will focus themselves consciously and deliberately upon the emotional plane through their control of their natures. Workers must therefore have practiced meditation, have reflected much upon the nature of the thought and its uses, and must be aware of the light within. When these three stages are established as related activities, habits, and automatic reactions, and when the intention is fixed and the ability to focus has become an almost instinctual reaction, then sound and effective work can be done. To this work must be added persistence and patience. It is not necessary, I might add, to have achieved perfection in the process before starting this work and service. Disciples and aspirants must cultivate the consciousness of cooperation and realization that in service, such as is proposed, they are definitely participating in a hierarchical activity and are therefore in a position to render help, even if they could not, alone and unaided, achieve the desired results. They can hasten the process by their combined help. The power of united effort upon the physical plane is being realized today on a large scale, and the war effort in all countries has greatly hastened this realization. The power of unified emotion, often expressing itself in what is called mob psychology, is everywhere recognized and feared as well as exploited. The power of unified thought is little grasped as yet, and the power inherent in the light of many minds, rendering them effective instruments in world affairs, penetrating and dissipating glamour and proving creative upon the physical plane, will prove to be a part of the new modes of work which will be employed in the new age. For this, the hierarchy has planned and worked, and it is now prepared to test the effectiveness of that work by organizing a group or groups which will work upon the problem of glamour. You can see, consequently, that what I am outlining is relatively new. The faint impression of the coming technique as far as the individual is concerned has been registered. Men and women everywhere are attempting to rid themselves of glamour by the power of clear thinking, stern discipline, and common sense, and by a recording consciously of their relation to the whole, which prompts them to eliminate out of their lives all that could hinder others or increase world deception through glamour. To this will be added, perhaps as an aspect of the New World religion now on its way towards externalizing, the realization that groups can successfully clear away the glamours which darken humanity's way to its goal through the power of combined and projected thought. In order to make the first step towards united group activity along this line of service, I present a formula or group ritual, which, if employed by those whose lives are relatively free from glamour, who are realists and who are recognized by the group as thus relatively free and who are animated by good intent, will do much to bring an end certain aspects of the world glamour. Their effort, combined with that of similar groups, will so weaken the power of these ancient glamours that the day of clarification will eventually come. First, however, let me briefly offer the use of the individual aspirant. Briefly offer for the use of the individual aspirant a formula whereby he may aid in freeing himself from his particular glamour or glamours. I will tabulate the process, and the aspirant would do well to follow it as given, having in his mind no sense of time, and being willing to do this work regularly for a month, and if necessary for years, until he has freed himself and the light breaks in on the astral plane through the medium of his astral body. I would suggest that no aspirant attempt to tackle the problem of glamour as a whole, or seek to dissipate all the glamours to which he is susceptible. He is dealing with very ancient evil and with firmly established habits of glamour. They are closely connected with aspects of his daily living, with his sex life, or with his ambitions, with his relations to other people, with his pet ideals and ideas, his dreams and visions. He should choose the glamour that is most apparent and the most hindering at any given time, and there is always one. And for its dissipation, he should work conscientiously if he would lay the foundations for effective service in the dissipation of world glamour. That is very interesting there. Let's see what we got here. Okay, I think we're going to stop there for today. And I think we're going to read that last paragraph again tomorrow. And then we will get into the formula for it. Because it's getting, there's some stuff going on here at the house, and I don't want to, but we don't all need to listen to what's going on around here. Well, anyway, okay. Well, that was, this is interesting. We're going to get into these this formula, and we will get back to work with this. And tomorrow we will be doing a treatise on white magic in the morning. Tomorrow's Sunday. So we will see you soon. We'll get back to Glamour on Monday. All right. Have a good one. Thanks.